His new quarters are cramped. He is under 24-hour guard, and he faces intense questioning. He is Theodore Bundy, and he's jailed in Florida. KOA's Pete Webb and cinematographer Mark Olinger have traveled to Pensacola and to Tallahassee for the Ted Bundy story, the story of his capture and the strange odyssey that led up to it.
Ted Bundy left his Pensacola jail cell twice yesterday. This was filmed after he'd been fingerprinted and photographed for Tallahassee detectives. His attorneys decided against asking for his release on bond.
I'd like to announce that the attorneys representing Mr. Bundy have decided that they do not want another bond hearing, so he will be held without bond. We have received a hold order from Colorado and Salt Lake City, Utah.
Bundy is being guarded in a second-floor cell, and last night was taken out for another session with Tallahassee Detective Sergeant Ben Rosar. "We've heard his life story," said Rosar. "He's telling us everything, but what we want to know. I'm holding my breath."
Theodore Robert Bundy, or Ted Bundy as we all know, was a notorious serial killer who committed at least 30 homicides of women and young girls between the years 1974 and 1978, possibly earlier. His true victim total is unknown and could be much higher. In 1975, Bundy was arrested and jailed in Utah for aggravated kidnapping and assault. He then became a suspect in a progressively longer list of unsolved homicides in several other states. Facing murder charges in Colorado, he engineered 2 dramatic escapes and committed further assaults in Florida, including 3 murders before his ultimate recapture in Pensacola, Florida. For the Florida homicides, he received 3 death sentences and 2 trials and was executed at Florida State Prison in Rayford on January 24, 1989. His MO involved luring innocent women across the Northwest, Washington State, Colorado, Utah. With his charismatic disposition and the fact women found him attractive, once they were in his grip, they found themselves victims of brutal beatings, raped, and murdered. Some of his victims survived, some didn't. He was arrested and booked in a Utah jail in 1975, but escaped and made his way down to Tallahassee, Florida, where he attacked 4 women and killing 2 co-eds after entering the Chi Omega sorority house at the Florida State University. At around 2:45 a.m., he bludgeoned to death Margaret Bowman, 21 years of age, with a piece of oak firewood as she slept. He then entered the bedroom of 20-year-old Lisa Levy, beating her unconscious and strangling her, including leaving the famous bite mark on her body that the courts would address in his trial later that helped get him convicted. He then entered another bedroom and attacked Kathy Kleiner, breaking her jaw and deeply lacerating her shoulder. He also attacked Karen Chandler, breaking her jaw, who also suffered from a concussion, loss of teeth, and a broken finger. Both Kleiner and Chandler would survive the attack, which Kleiner attributed their survival to some car lights that illuminated the interior of their room, causing Bundy to flee the scene. Tallahassee detectives estimate these attacks took place in as little as 15 minutes or less. After leaving the sorority house, Bundy wasn't finished. About 8 blocks away, Bundy broke into a basement apartment and attacked Cheryl Thomas, dislocating her shoulder and breaking her jaw and skull in 5 places. She was left with permanent deafness and equilibrium damage that would end her dance career. On February 8th, Bundy drove 150 miles to Jacksonville, Florida in a stolen FSU van where he approached a 14-year-old Leslie Parmenter, who happened to be the daughter of Jacksonville Police Department's chief of detectives. Bundy identified himself as Richard Burton, Fire Department, but retreated when Parmenter's brother arrived and challenged him, causing Bundy to retreat and leave the scene. That same afternoon, Bundy backtracked 60 miles westward to Lake City. At Lake City Junior High, the following morning, 12-year-old Diane Leach was summoned to her homeroom by a teacher to retrieve a purse, but she never returned to class. After an extensive search and 7 weeks later, her mummified remains were found in a pig shed near Swanee River State Park. She had been raped and her throat was slashed, causing her death. Bundy then stole his car of choice, an orange Volkswagen Beetle, and headed west across the Florida Panhandle, where he ended up in Pensacola, Florida, about 25 minutes from where I live today, where he was stopped by a Pensacola police officer, David Lee, after checking the car's license plate and finding out it was a stolen vehicle. When told he was under arrest, Bundy kicked Lee's legs out from under him and took off running. Lee fired a warning shot followed by a second round, gave chase, and tackled him. The two struggled over Lee's gun before the officer finally subdued and arrested Bundy. In the stolen vehicle were 3 sets of IDs belonging to female FSU students, 21 stolen credit cards, and a stolen television set. Also found were a pair of dark-rimmed, non-prescription glasses and a pair of plaid slacks, later identified as the disguise worn by Richard Burton Fire Department, one of Bundy's aliases. As Lee transported his suspect to jail, unaware that he had just arrested one of the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives, he heard Bundy say, "I wish you had killed me." After his capture, he was extradited back to Tallahassee, and his trial took place in Miami following a change of venue. Bundy represented himself in court, to which he was found guilty of the murders he committed in Florida. Not long before his execution date, he began to confess to more killings, which added up to around 30, but it is widely believed he killed more than that. Bundy was executed in Rayford at the Florida State Prison at 7:16 a.m. on January 24, 1989. He was cremated in Gainesville, Florida, and his ashes scattered at an undisclosed location in the Cascades of Washington State. The day Bundy was executed, a crowd of people stood outside the prison walls and celebrated, even setting off fireworks and holding signs for Bundy to burn. Because Bundy died before he could tell authorities where the missing bodies of some of the women he killed were placed by him, we may never know the true count of his murders. But what we do know is that he was one of the most brutal and prolific serial killers in history. A few years back, I visited the site where he was captured at the location of Oscar's restaurant in Pensacola, where murals were put up to commemorate that event. As of today, new owners have taken over the restaurant and apparently were not too fond of the murals and had them painted over. Before they were painted over, I managed to get a few photos, and here they are.